Hi everybody, Mark from Audio Pursuit, and in this episode I want to kind of reflect back upon my 5 favorite stand mount speakers that I have put my ears on since I was in high school. So let's get started. Number 5, the Polk Audio Monitor 10s. Now, granted, these were a large cabinet, but they did have to sit on small stands with a tilt. Now, when I first heard them, unfortunately I didn't buy them. I bought the Infinity RSAs instead. And the only reason is because I didn't have the extra $100. And the fact that they were in that rosewood vinyl, whereas the Infinities had an oak veneer cabinet which matched my oak veneer stereo cabinet my grandfather had made for me. So I went down that route for a couple of years and wised up one day when I entered into recycled audio in Boulder, Colorado. And those of you who have gone back to the 1980s and remember recycled audio, well, that was a great place to go. And anyhow, I went in and I heard them and it was like, holy cow, how did I make this mistake? So I found a buyer for my RSAs and bought the Monitor 10s, and they lasted me for many years. Past college, into my marriage, and just loved them. And there was something about them. I think the passive woofer and the dual mid-range drivers, along with, I had the 2nd generation tweeter, was just a nice match. I even ran a dance for 400 to 500 people with a pair of those and my stereo receiver, because we couldn't afford to hire professional equipment, and they did a great job that night. So those speakers have a great sense of memory for me, got me through college, got my degree, and just plain fun. And the interesting thing is, one of my very good friends from high school still has them down in his basement rec room. Number 4. These were the speakers that introduced me to stereo. My brother-in-law had these, and they are the Adesso L810s. Once again, a large cabinet sat on a set of small stands. If you like jazz music and you were into Steely Dan, Asia, and so forth, those were the speakers. And man, were they glorious for a time. I heard some a few years back, and yep, they still have it. That ADS sound was something special, especially with jazz. I can remember my brother-in-law, you know, just listening to Chick Corea and artists like that and just being amazed. Manhattan Transfer, just something about those speakers, they did it right. You know, basically they got my start. My love of stereo equipment started with hearing them, and the very first time was when we dropped them off back at college at Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. He'd been dating my sister for a while, and we took him back, and really, that was something really good. So that would be my number 4. Number 3 on my list, these are more of a true stand mount speaker that would always get accolades at the various audio shows, and that was the Pen Audio Senas. I owned those for about 2-3 years, and you know, talk about clarity. Incredibly clear sounding speakers, great detail between the speakers. They image tremendously, good soundstage, all those wonderful things. It's no question that why they were so popular at the audio shows, because they sounded good and they were easy to set up. You could put them anywhere in just a couple of minutes. They could be in a good sweet spot. you know, I really enjoyed my time with them. Their one issue was, for me, in my rooms that I listened to, and there was a couple of different ones in my previous home, was the fact they didn't seem to play real well outside each speaker. That was their one limitation. Between the speakers, terrific. Outside, they kind of found their wall pretty quick. And that was the one thing that disappointed me. But for dynamics and so forth, great speaker. Not hard to drive. Just really, really nice sound. Number 2 on my list, and probably no surprise in some ways, the Totem Signature Ones. Just, you know, typical Totem sound. Images like nothing else. Wide sound stage. You point them straight ahead. You don't have to, you know, pivot them towards you. Just set them up, let them go. And that sound, so typical of Vince Brucesi. Just incredibly soulful. You know, there's a lot of truth in their advertising. I loved the sound of those. They were just terrific. You know, one of the things is at the time I needed some cash flow, and so I had to let them go. And you know, sometimes that happens, but you know, still really fond memories. It's part of the reason why when I found the original Model 1s, I picked them up and then bought a subwoofer so that I could get close to that same sound within a much smaller budget. But really, the Signature Ones, just, they hold a special place to me. With tube equipment, they are outrageous. So that's my number 2. Number 1, have to go back to an oversized cabinet a bit, and that would be the Harbeth Compact 7s. Just, what can I say? There's a richness that Harbeth has in their sound that you just don't hear very often in lower price speakers. You know, not until you get up above 10,000. But they have that depth. I mean, their front to back is so deep and rich. Tonally, they're incredible. And they kind of lull you to sleep a little bit because they're so even from the bottom register all the way up to the top. You know, there's no pushes at certain frequencies. They're relaxing. And you forget how good they are. You know, they're not the most dynamic speaker. Absolutely true. But, you know, that richness. I just felt like I was listening to a system much more expensive than what I actually had with them. But unfortunately, I sold them off because they were probably a little too big for my small space in my previous home, which was just 9 by 12. I didn't feel like they gave themselves their full capability in that space. When I moved them out to my living room every once in a while, yeah, then it fit. But really, they just need a bigger space. And that's probably why I'm looking to eventually pick up a pair of their P3s, which will play much better in this room than the Compact 7s will in some cases, just because their size. So that's my 5 favorites. Now, like I said, these are ones I've experienced that are no longer in my system, so I don't include what I have now. But, you know, the joy is the experience, and those 5 were joyful. Till next time, take care, everyone.